Hi and welcome to today's episode in which I make a delicious carrot cake and try out Ermine Frosting for the first time. Tomorrow is the 27th of October, which is my birthday and also the channel's birthday, and I've decided I'm going to celebrate with some cake. Initially I was thinking along the lines of perhaps doing a spiced apple cake, so maybe doing a spiced sponge similar to the Christmas cake that I did, and then caramelising some apples to put in the middle, a caramel frosting to put on the top, but then got my grocery delivery and realised I'd doubled up on carrots. I've decided to pivot and make a carrot cake. I still really fancy the idea of the caramel frosting though, so I'm going to do that instead of the standard cream cheese frosting. Because the caramel frosting is obviously going to be quite sweet, I'm going to play around a little bit with the flavours of the carrot cake itself. I looked on domesticgothess.com for a vegan carrot cake recipe. I'm going to use this as the base, but I'm going to change up some of the ingredients. Theirs uses light brown soft sugar and caster sugar, just white caster sugar. I'm going to switch that out for dark brown soft sugar and light brown soft sugar, so it should be very deep in flavour, and also add in a couple of other spices just to slightly change the flavour profile, because I think that will balance nicely with the caramel. I think I might also put some salt in the caramel, make it like a salted caramel. So together it should be quite nice. I found a recipe for caramel buttercream, and then in the comments when I was having a look at the bottom, like underneath the recipe, someone, I can't remember what the comment said exactly, but mentioned Ermine Frosting. I'd never heard of it before, so I did a bit of a Google and thought that sounds quite interesting to try. Apparently it's a very fluffy type of frosting. If you've had a Twinkie or a Ding Dong, I've had a Twinkie but not a Ding Dong, it's a similar kind of thing to that. I'll do the flour part of the Ermine Frosting first because that needs to be cooled right down. The recipe I'm using for the frosting is from sugargeekshow.com. I'll link to all three recipes in the description. Neither the caramel or the frosting recipes are vegan, so this could completely go wrong, but we're going to find out. The original recipe says granulated sugar. I'm going to do golden castor, 200 grams, which is 7 ounces. I'm using it because it's got a slightly caramel flavour. And then I'm going to do 45 grams or 1.5 ounces of flour. The recipe just says flour. I'm going to use cake flour. And then we're just going to toast this off gently for a couple of minutes. I want to cook the flour out just so it doesn't taste raw. When you have the flour and sugar in the bowl, just make sure you whisk it quite well, just so nothing stays in one place for too long. Now I'm going to slowly add in 230 mils of milk. I'll add a bit at a time, I think. And I'm going to try and really work hard not to get any lumps in there. And stir the milk. So that looks to be nice and lump-free so far. And now we're going to heat it up to a simmer, and it will go thick and pudding-like, or I guess custard-like for UK dwellers. My stove goes up to 9. I toasted the flour and sugar on 5. I've just increased it from 5 to 6 to 7, just until it starts bubbling. So at this point, I'd avoid splitting your attention. Stand over it and whisk it almost continuously, because that way you'll definitely avoid any lumps. And turn the heat down a bit now. So that looks pretty thick, so it needs to simmer for another minute. I'm going to transfer that into a bowl. Now I'm taking a piece of cling film and I'm going to put it on the top, and I want it to completely cover so that it can't form a skin. So there's the mixture in the bowl. You can just see the line of the cling film, like that. I'm going to put this on the floor because it's cold down on the kitchen floor, just to help it cool down faster. And then I'll stick it in the fridge. You just don't want to be putting warm things into a fridge. Time to make the cake itself. So I'm going to preheat the oven to 160, which is about 350 Fahrenheit. The recipe states using 2 tins. I don't have 2 tins of the same size, so I'm just going to do one big one and cut it through the middle. I'm just going to use the same bowl. I'm going to do 200 grams of dark brown soft sugar. That's 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons. And then 100 grams or half a cup of light brown soft sugar. This is 180 mils or 3/4 of a cup of sunflower oil. Then I'm going to add 180 mils, 3/4 of a cup of the oat milk. I'm going to zest a lemon on the microplane. You could also use orange if you prefer. You need a tablespoon of lemon juice. A tablespoon worked out at half a lemon, but that's going to depend on the size of your lemons. 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Go in and whisk this together. Because I've used different sugars, I might add an extra little bit of flour because the moisture content is a bit higher in the brown sugars. I need 230 grams of plain flour, 2 cups minus 1 tablespoon. And then I need 100 grams of plain wholemeal flour. That's 3/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons. I'm going to pass this through a sieve to get lumps out, and that's going to leave behind all the bran. So I'm going to put the bran back in because that'll have a nice bit of texture. If you don't have the brown flour, feel free to try it with just plain flour. It probably will be a bit more delicate. I'm going to do 2 teaspoons of baking powder and 1 of baking soda. The spices that I'm going to use, it's the same blend that I did in the sweet treats video. I'll link to that in the description, or just buy a jar of mixed spices. So I'm going to do 3 of that. I'll do 1 of cinnamon. I'm going to add some coriander seeds and black cardamom. These are whole, so I need to do them in the pestle and mortar. That's probably 1/4 teaspoon, 4 of those pods. So you can see the shell kind of pops off, and you can pull the seeds out. It would be better to get them a bit finer than that, but my hands are hurting, so I'm just going to have to make do. And then 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then I'm going to whisk this together into a smooth batter. I need to be careful not to overbeat it because that can make the cake tough. That's looking pretty good. In this bowl is 360 grams of grated carrots, 12.5 ounces. I did those on the coarse box grater. So I'm going to add those in and then gently work this in. Oh, I was going to do a bit more flour, wasn't I? I'm going to chuck some of the cake flour in. 2 tablespoons. It might be unnecessary to do that, but I'd rather have a cake that was a little bit too dry than I would something that's mushy. That's the cake tin I'm going to use. I think this is a 9-inch. I've lined it in foil and then rubbed sunflower oil into it. Pull the batter in. Tin's all filled. I'm going to put this on the middle shelf. The recipe says in the oven 35 minutes, but that's for 2 cakes that are thinner. I've set my timer for 35, but my suspicion is more like 45, 50. Stick a skewer in after 35 minutes, and that'll help me gauge how much longer it needs. I might need to cover it with foil. Once I stick the skewer in, it comes out completely clean. Then I will put it on a rack, the tin on a rack, and then after 10 minutes, I'll take the tin off and then just let it cool completely. Leave it in the tin for a while just so it can firm up a touch, otherwise it might just collapse, which we don't want. The cake's finished baking. It was in the oven for 55 minutes in the end. Stuck my temperature probe in, and once it hit 200 Fahrenheit, it also came out clean. Here it is. Good job it came out when it did, really, because there's a couple spots where it's starting to go quite dark. I'm going to do the caramel as a dry caramel. All I need to do is melt that sugar down. Once all of it's melted, I'll add in the butter. I'm going to do something risky / stupid. I want to try something out. The recipe says to add cream. I'm going to try adding vanilla soy yogurt. I'm just curious as to whether that will work. And if it goes wrong, I've not lost a massive amount. It's only 100 grams of sugar and a bit of butter. My main motivator for using the yogurt is I do have a thing of plant-based cream, but I only need 60 mils and I don't eat a lot of cream. So I don't want to have 190 mils of this. It's a 250 mil tub. I don't want to have this sitting in the fridge waiting to be used, probably getting forgotten, getting knocked over. That is 100 grams of the golden castor sugar. That's 30 grams of vegan butter that I've cut into small pieces just to make it easy to whisk in. And then that's 60 grams of the vegan soy yogurt. I'm going to whisk it a little bit just to see if I can make it a bit looser. I'll do that away from the pan though. On the subject of the pan, this one is probably a bit too small. We'll see. I can see it melting there. I'm on 5. Again, this goes up to 9. Yeah, I'm a little bit worried that it's gonna get dark before the top of it's melted. The convention is not to stir it. The recipe does say gently move it around the pan, because what can happen with caramel is that it crystallizes. I think that's gone too far too fast. I'm just blobbing a bit on some silicone. I think that might be okay. I'm gonna use it, you know. For people in the UK, it tastes like bonfire toffee, which I think is quite nice. Be careful when you're doing this. And then get the yogurt in. It's gone very dark. Well, the yogurt isn't splitting, so at least I know that works. Yeah, very, very dark. I'm going to take some out. It's got a bitter note to it, but I was going to make it salty, wasn't I? So let's try like 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, because salt counteracts bitter flavours. So it could be that adding a touch of salt is just going to help lift that bitter edge, because this is going to be diluted by the Ermine Frosting anyway. So it's probably done 1/4 teaspoon. This is probably going to be too dark for a lot of people, but I wanted the flavour of the cake to have some kind of depth and complexity. So that's had, I think, half a teaspoon salt. I think I'm actually happy with it. It's a little bit molasses, treacle. That's a nice little discovery. As I say, it is very intense. It's like espresso coffee. I don't know how to describe it. I really like it. Maybe I'm a psychopath. Sort of right as I started thinking maybe that's gone too far, I think that would have been the sweet spot for a standard caramel. I think because I'm mixing that into the frosting, it's just going to add a little something rather than just being sweet. The yogurt doesn't look to have caused a problem at all, so that is something that I'll do more of in the future. Getting it to this exact colour is going to be a risky endeavour if you want to replicate it. But what a happy accident. Yeah, it's a little bit licorice, a little bit coffee, dark chocolate. It's in that end of the flavour spectrum. All I need to do now is wait for that to completely cool down and for the Ermine Frosting base for that to cool. When I found the recipe for the caramel buttercream, it said enough to frost and fill a 7-inch cake. I then remembered I still had this in the freezer. So that is brandy buttercream from the Christmas cake for people who hate Christmas cake. It's a standard buttercream and I whipped brandy into it. And then here, that's the last of the hazelnut praline cream that I made from that chocolate stout cake. So I'm gonna whip it back up just to see if I can get a bit of life into it. Mix in this praline cream and then put a layer of that in the middle. It's gonna have a milder flavor than both the cake and the caramel frosting. So I think it will just be nice, you know, a nice thing in the middle. I was thinking I'd toast off some hazelnuts, maybe to decorate the top. I might sprinkle the chopped hazelnuts on top of this, and then there's some crunch in the middle. The cake has finally cooled down, only took 2.5 hours. Took it off the paper and flipped it upside down just to let the bottom cool off a little bit faster as well. I whipped up the brandy butter that I'd taken out of the freezer. It seems to have come back together nicely. Put it in a small bowl, whipped it up just on a low setting. Once I was happy that it was fluffy, I then took the hazelnut praline cream, mixed that into it. I decided I wanted a little bit of tanginess to it, almost riffing on a cream cheese frosting kind of thing. So I whipped in a little bit of vegan lactic acid powder. I keep it in the cupboard for making vegan cheeses, that kind of thing, because it's a really nice tangy flavour. You could also use citric acid, maybe lemon juice, but it is going to add a bit of wetness into the mix. I'll link to the chocolate stout / porter cake where I made cream cheese frosting. That part of it is completely optional. Feel free to just use the frosting that I'm going to use on top. Use that inside as well, not a problem. It's my birthday, I'm going to be extra. The recipe says the Ermine frosting sets pretty quickly. I'm going to take that as read and go worst case scenario, because I don't want to do the frosting, put it down, split the cake, do that side of things, come back and it's too stiff to pipe neatly. Here is the cakey, looking very delicious. Don't just tear through the cake. I mean, you can if you want, but it's gonna crumble like here. Can you see that's starting to break? That's the brandy buttercream with the praline cream added in. So it's gone nice and thick. It's not just oozing. I've also got some chopped toasted hazelnuts. So I'm gonna blob it all on. Then I'm gonna go over with a palette knife and then I can spread it out from there. Put some nuts on. So this was around 50 grams or so of the chopped hazelnuts. I very carefully reassemble the cake. I'm gonna push this out of the way for now and we will crack on with the frosting. This is 230 grams of softened vegan butter, 8 ounces. Make sure it's softened, not melted, because we need it to be fluffy. Here's our very dark caramel sauce. And then this is the flour, sugar, and milk mixture. First step is to beat the butter until it goes fluffy. It should only take a couple of minutes. I've put it up on a tea towel just to stop the bowl skidding round. Scrape the sides of it. You'll know you're on the right track when it goes pale because we're forcing lots of air into it. Set my ladle into the flour mixture and I'll put small amounts in as I'm going. So I've got a little bit of the flour mixture to go in. So I'm just going to scrape this down. Looks very fluffy. So we'll add this last bit in. As ever, I made a right old mess. I'm going to add in some vanilla extract. So we'll do that while it's running. And then we'll start adding the caramel. Yeah, I'm going to put it all in. I was worried that the frosting mixture would just melt, but it looks like it's gonna be fine. Final flavour check. Yeah, good. Glad I put the salt in, otherwise it'd be super, super sugary. So I'm gonna pack the piping bag. I've used a number 20 tip, like a little 5-pointed star. For anyone who hasn't piped before, when you stuff in the bag, it's good to turn the top outside because otherwise it gets all up your hand. Reminds me of the old school swimming caps. So I'm gonna scatter nuts on. I'm very happy to say that my birthday cake is done. Looking very, very tasty indeed. Yum, 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 yum. That's the amount of frosting I've got left. If I hadn't have done the brandy buttercream, probably would have been just about the right amount. I'll probably chuck that in the freezer and then we'll do something with it next year. I am very ready to get this inside my face. So the texture is nice and stable, despite the cracking and bits falling apart. It looks to be, on the fork at least, pretty decent. It's sweet and it's rich, but it's not sickly. I think because I used the dark sugar, because I took the caramel too far, because I put salt in the caramel, all of that is just taking the sweetness away a little bit. It's sugary, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't taste like a kid's birthday cake. It's lovely and light, but also really nice and moist. It's not dry. I'm going to be happy to eat that for several days. I've just looked at the Christmas cake recipe and I think the Ermine Frosting is going to be cheaper because you're using roughly half the amount of sugar and 70 grams less of the butter, and I've got the same quantity. I've got a feeling I've got a little bit more of this, so it is a bit cheaper to make. I'll also link to the coffee and walnut cake I made several months ago. I did like a coffee buttercream for that one. All you need to do is follow the instructions for that video and then just right at the end whip through the caramel. It's now 20 past 11. I've got 40 minutes before it's officially my birthday. I'm gonna have a really good clean down, sit down, finish the rest of the cake while drinking a scotch and watching Ghost Ship because I'm in the mood for a trashy movie. If you've been with the channel since I launched it on my birthday 4 years ago, I want to say a massive thank you to you. Having your support there really is a lovely thing to have. I also want to thank my community over on Patreon. Getting their monthly membership dues honestly helps put food in the cupboard, pay the electricity bill and all the other associated costs. And it's a nice way of showing creators that you like a bit of extra appreciation. There's a few different tiers, so choose whatever feels affordable for you, and in return you'll get access to bonus content, behind the scenes features, all kinds of community chat features. If you're looking for lots more plant-based recipe inspiration, I have you covered from crackers to cakes to cannelloni. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. Tap the bell icon if you want to get an alert as soon as I publish a new one, while you're waiting for the next one. Have a look at this.